Hi, I'm Alex Jordan. One of the main questions I usually get is from filmmakers asking me whether they should be using Davinci Resolve or Speedgrade, and why would they choose one over the other. I think these are the two most popular platforms at the moment, Resolve being Resolve and free, and Speedgrade being supported by Adobe. Now, before we get into this, a disclaimer. I'm not affiliated or paid by Blackmagic Design in any way or form. I have two online courses that teaches both platforms. So I have an online course that teaches Davinci Resolve, and I have an online course that teaches Speedgrade. Now, let's take a look at the timeline first. In Davinci Resolve, the timeline is a bunch of thumbnails here down. So, Speedgrade's timeline is just a normal timeline with no thumbnail representation. I do understand that you can get some thumbnail representation, but not if you're bringing your timeline from Premiere Pro, which is what most of editors would do. So this is the biggest problem. I really have no idea what this clip is, and I just have to keep on switching back and forth, to see what these clips are. Now in Resolve, these thumbnails actually represents the actual color of the image. So for example, let's come to this image here, and I'm just going to, just bring the whole exposure down. Okay, and I'm just going to come back to the image I was on originally. Now, this image shows me the current state of this image, so I can compare all my images just by looking at the timeline, which makes my work way faster. In Resolve, we also have the lightbox mode. So if I click on this button here, now I'm in lightbox. I can see all the images in my film in this weird timeline. So this is the first clip, and this is the last clip, and these are all the clips in my timeline, and I can just zoom out and in. So I can see the color flow, throughout my entire film, how it's happening. If there are any shots that have any problems, I can just see them right there. And if I wanted to change anything, I don't even have to go back to my original view. I can simply just click on the image here, and I can click on Show Controls, and now I can control my image from the lightbox view. So now I can correct my image while I see it in context, while I see all the colors of the images around it. Again, I do understand that in Speedgrade, you do have the 2-up and 3-up views, but there is nothing to show you your entire film in this way. So you can tell exactly what's happening from the beginning to end of the film. Then you have the curves. We have a lot of curves that are present in Davinci Resolve, that they do some advanced color controls that are not available in Speedgrade. First, we have the hue versus hue curve, and this is a simple curve if you've never used Resolve before. What we're doing basically is that we're choosing a certain hue in the image, and we're changing the hue of this particular hue. And this gives us extreme controls over things like skin tones. And colors in the backgrounds like grass or many other things. Now, not to say that you cannot do the same adjustments inside Speedgrade. It just takes much longer because you have to pull a key and you have to be able to use a key. Now, in Speedgrade, they just added the hue saturation curve, which is basically you're controlling the saturation of certain hues, but not the hue of a certain hue in the image. So, for example, I can take the green parts of the image and I just can increase their saturation, but that's about it. I can't change their hue based on my very fast selection. Then we have the Luma versus saturation, which is basically controls the saturation over certain luminance ranges. So, for example, I can reduce saturation in shadows and increase it in midtones, and also control it in highlights. Now, we have a similar thing in the primary controls here, where if we go to shadows, we have the input and the final saturation in Speedgrade. But it's still very limited control. I mean, here I can simply just drag the midtones and control exactly where I want my saturation to be increased. This is a way higher level of control. And finally, we have the saturation versus saturation, which is controlling the saturation of certain colors in the image based on how saturated they are. So I can simply choose the colors that are very saturated and simply just bring their saturation down, which is, again, it can be done with a workaround in Speedgrade, but it's not as simple and as straightforward as the way it's in Resolve. Then, the qualifier. Now, if we come to Speedgrade and we initiate a secondary color control, you can see that all what we have is HLS, which is hue, lightness, saturation. Now, in Davinci Resolve, we have more than one type of of qualifiers. We have the HSL, the RGB, and the Luma qualifier. Well, the Luma doesn't really count because Luma is basically HSL with hue and lightness turned off. So we have the HSL and RGB. But what gets interesting is that we have a bunch of other controls here in Resolve. So when we create our matte, we can simply use a black clip or a white clip operation to refine our matte, something you cannot do in Speedgrade. All what you can do after pulling your key is to denoise or blur your selection. Then, one of the most important things that Davinci Resolve can do is the versioning system, which is basically that Resolve records different versions of coloring for the same shot, which are different than the gallery shots. So for example, I'm just going to come to this image now and just bring the gamma down, bring saturation down. All right, let's just bring it a bit blue, just make it really low key. Okay, now this is my first version. Now I'm just going to right click here, go to local versions and create a new version. It's going to be version 2. I'm going to reset all grades and nodes, and I'm going to increase the saturation and just make a slightly brighter version. Great. Now we have 2 versions of the same shot that are stored inside the shot, so we don't have to go to the gallery and look for this particular version because they're both stored inside the shot. So I can simply right click, go to version 1 and load. And now I have version 1 or version 2. And when it comes to exporting, I can simply tell Resolve to export version 1 or version 2 or 3 or 4 of this shot, which is pretty convenient because versions save the tracking data inside them. If they have any windows tracked, they will carry the tracking data. And they just make it extremely easy to change your mind and work in different, versions of the same shot. And I can simply switch back and forth. Or I can activate a split screen option that will show me all the versions of my shot. So for this shot, I have this version and this version. They're both fully functional. They're stored inside this shot. So I don't have to mix them by mistake with any other shots. However, when it comes to Speedgrade, you just can't simply store the versions inside your shot. You have to create a new folder and just store all your looks inside this particular folder and just keep on going back and forth between them. So a look is a look and it's not attached to your shot in any way. Then, one of the biggest features in Resolve is the ability to sample parts of the image and display them on curves. So if I simply click on any object in my image, it will actually show me where this part of the image that I clicked on falls on the RGB curves, which for example makes it extremely easy to color correct your footage, and pretty accurate also. So there's no guesswork involved. I can simply just line these points, and now I know that this part of the image is pure white. So let me just increase saturation and repeat this one more time. You see how I color corrected my image really fast, but if I come to Speedgrade, it will include a lot of guesswork because I'm just going to have to go to my scopes and start working my way from there, which will take time. Unfortunately, if you come to the RGB curves in Speedgrade, there is no way you can click on any object to know exactly where it falls. It will give you all the data in numbers, which is great, but where does that fall on the curves here? So I can balance my image. This also makes it extremely easy to add contrast without affecting your image. Like for example, I'm just going to reset all grades and nodes here, and let's say that I wanted to add more contrast by bringing the hair down without affecting her face. I will simply click on her face, so now I have this point working as a placeholder. And then I will click on this part of her hair and just bring it down a bit. So now I can add contrast without affecting certain parts of the image that I want to, preserve the luminance on. Then there is tracking. Now, the tracker inside Davinci Resolve is simply phenomenal. First of all, it's very accurate, so let me just, for example, add a window here. Well, you see the point. You see why, Resolve's tracker is regarded as one of the best in the industry. Now, another very cool thing is that now when I move the window around, so let's say I place it here, it basically updates all the other keyframes. So now I don't really have to go and select all the keyframes and move them, to the left or something, which is unfortunately the case with the tracker in Speedgrade. So if you track a window, it will simply add a lot of keyframes. So the tracker in Speedgrade basically adds keyframes to track the points of the face, which is a pretty good tracker. It tracks it pretty accurately. However, when I want to change the position, let's say that I now tracked his face and I just want to change something about the positioning, and I just move it to the left. Now what happened here is that we moved this particular keyframe to the left and all the other keyframes are still in place, which is something that will create a lot of problems, because usually after tracking the object, you modify your window a lot, and this just prevents you from modifying your window, which is of course different than Davinci's approach, where you have your keyframe window different than your tracking window. So simply now I can just move the window, just make it larger, change its shape, and it will always pull from the same tracking data. I'm sure there are lots of other features that I did not, discuss here, but these are the top features that I can think of in answer for the question where everybody asked me whether they should be using Davinci Resolve or Adobe Speedgrade. Now, I still use Speedgrade a lot because Speedgrade have some nice features. First, it's the very fast workflow between Premiere and Speedgrade. So I can simply hit a button and it will just take my entire sequence and just get it to Speedgrade, where I can just work on it and bring it back to Premiere Pro. And Speedgrade can actually work with and color grade nested sequences from After Effects. So you can get an After Effects sequence into Speedgrade through Adobe Premiere without any rendering. So when it comes to complicated stuff or things where I'm looking for more accuracy, I would definitely go to Davinci Resolve every time. But for smaller, faster projects, I go to Speedgrade. Now, Speedgrade should be getting an update very soon, and I hope that they will be fixing some of these issues, because I really like the how fast the workflow is, because I work with Adobe. I use After Effects, Premiere Pro, Photoshop, Audition, and the only missing link here is the color grading part. So far, until this point, definitely for most of my color grading work, I usually go to Davinci Resolve. One more thing that is a bit weird about Speedgrade before I finish, it only tracks forward. So if you have a window and you want to track it, you only have this button that tracks forward. But in Davinci Resolve and even in Premiere Pro, you have a track backwards button. Sometimes you just want to come to a certain point, work on your color here, and just track backwards and track forward. Now, even in Premiere Pro, that's possible. You can track backwards in Premiere Pro, but not in Speedgrade for some reason. Thank you. This is Alex Jordan.